this is happening in Los Angeles. The White House official. Oh, wait. So there's a thing called the Americas Summit that's happening here, and White House officials confirmed Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, they were excluded. I wonder why the socialists. So an activist disrupts. So this is somebody went there to disrupt, and they're a coup overturned. They're calling out this guy named Luis Almagro at a Summit of the Americas event, calling out his role in the 2019 Bolivian coup. The coup overturned the victory of the elected socialist president Evo Morales and inaugurated a right-wing reign of terror that left scores dead. So why do they keep overthrowing socialists? Because the capitalists don't want socialism. So whenever someone gets elected who's a socialist, the capitalists go in and stage a coup. That's how this works. And if they can't do a coup, they do what we did to Cuba. And so here it is. Here's this person.
And he was killed. You're here to lecture about media freedom when you install the dictatorship that murders journalists and murders innocent people. You have blood on your hands. Because of your lies, there was a coup in Bolivia, a coup against the democratically elected government. And that dictatorship that you helped install massacred 36 people, 36 innocent people who are protesting for the restoration of their democracy, for the restoration of the independence of their country. In the towns of Sacaba and Secata, people were protesting peacefully, indigenous people, workers, women, students, demanding the restoration of that democracy that you helped destroy. Destroy because the United States wanted to plunder the resources, the lithium, the gold, all of the mineral resources, the gas of Bolivia. The corporations in Wall Street in the United States wanted to loot the resources of Bolivia. And so you helped install a dictatorship that would facilitate that looting. In Sacaba and Secata, dozens of people were massacred by the soldiers of your dictatorship. The soldiers of your dictatorship. And one of the people that your dictatorship murdered was a journalist, Sebastian Moro. He was a journalist who was exposing the lies that you were telling and exposing the truth about the coup that you orchestrated, and he was beaten to death in his apartment. And now you come here and dare to lecture about media freedom, about democracy, about human rights. You have no shame. You're a murderer, and you're a puppet of the United States. A puppet of the United States. In Venezuela, too, you dared to support the coup attempt that Juan Guaido ridiculously, outrageously tried to attempt and declare himself the president of Venezuela. What a lie! What a lie! The majority of people in Venezuela had never even heard of Juan Guaido. And yet you said that he's the president, and I believe you still ridiculously say that Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela. That is an outrage and it's insult. An insult to the democracy and the sovereignty of the people of Venezuela. How dare you do this? You murderer who murdered people in Bolivia. You murderer who supported the sanctions in Venezuela. The sanctions in Venezuela that killed 40,000 people. 40,000 people because of your lies, because of the coup attempt that you've been part of. And you are nothing but a murderer, and you have no shame here to come and talk about human rights, to lecture the whole world, to lecture the whole hemisphere about democracy and the freedom of the press. When Sebastian Moro, an Argentine journalist who was in Bolivia, exposing the truth about the coup, and he was killed. You're here to lecture about media freedom when you install the dictatorship that murders journalists and murders innocent people, workers, indigenous people, students, you.
Way to go. And so and who was he yelling at? He was yelling at Luis Leonardo Almagro Lopez. He's a Uruguayan lawyer, diplomat, and politician who currently serves as the 10th Secretary General of the Organization of American States, or the OAS. He also served as Minister of Foreign Affairs between 2010 and 2015 during the presidency of Jose Mujica. So the OAS lied to the public about the Bolivian election and coup. So this guy was democratically elected, and they couped him. And so that's what that guy was yelling about. And that's happening here. That happened here in Los Angeles. And let me just throw it to Max and Kurt. Go ahead and.
Oh, I wondered why they let him go so long. He was in Los Angeles. He wasn't in. I was like, if he was down there, he'd have been tackled a long time ago, right?
So
he wasn't at the Bilderberg meeting.
No, he was not at the Bilderberg meeting. Yeah. And you any comment on that, Max?
Well, we have at the Grayzone, we have a documentary about the massacre in Bolivia by the coup regime of Janine Áñez, who's on trial right now for 30 years by a democratically elected government. But when the coup came, when she took over as leader of this coup, the police forces, which were brought in from the east of Bolivia, where the right wing has its base, came in and massacred indigenous protesters in La Paz, and specifically in an area called El Alto, which is the base of the indigenous Aymara population, around a gas plant that they had were protesting, and they just opened fire on them, killed them. And we went along with a human rights lawyer named Thomas Becker, who has been doing a lot of work on against the coup leaders in Bolivia, to the site of this massacre, where dozens of people were just cut down, completely unarmed people. We have a documentary featuring Anya Parampil at the Grayzone. If you want to learn more about what Luis Almagro presided over as the OAS chief, the Secretary General, what did Almagro do? Well, he basically validated a stolen election as legitimate, in which after Evo Morales won an election, who was then the longtime president of Bolivia, the first indigenous president in the Americas, a leftist figure, socialist with a socialist-oriented government that had presided over severe reductions of poverty. Almagro said, the election was tampered with, and it electrified the coup forces, who were being funded by wealthy oligarchs in the east of the country. And it led to these massacres. It led to a massive crackdown. Many people were jailed. I interviewed a mayor of Cochabamba, a city in Bolivia, who was dragged through the streets and tortured because she was associated with Morales. They poured red paint over her. Then they went to her house and poisoned her dogs. And Evo Morales' sister's house was torched. I mean, the country was turned upside down. And then we were present for the election of this government that ousted the coup government and is now putting its key figures on trial. But Almagro is still there at the head of the Organization of American States. And he is the worst, most corrupt, most undemocratic, divisive figure to ever lead that position, a position that was created to fight socialism in the Western Hemisphere. But no one has been as destructive as Almagro. He's also been obsessed with Venezuela, toppling its socialist government, obsessed with Nicaragua. He redirected money that Brazil owed from its national debt, working with Michel Temer, the then coup president, who came in through a parliamentary coup against Dilma Rousseff, to start to antagonize Venezuela for human rights violations, to basically pay for a team to start to antagonize Venezuela. Almagro worked hand in glove with Juan Guaido's fake DC ambassador, Carlos Vecchio, to help design the coup that the Trump administration would wage in Venezuela. So here you have him being treated as being scrutinized it's a very rare case of scrutiny for Almagro, I would say.
Yeah, it does. Weren't you surprised at how long they did let him talk? I think he was surprised too. I thought they thought he'd evenally run out of gas, but he didn't.
Yeah, like he'll repeat material.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still here.
I'm still here. Okay. He had to repeat the first.
He started out with blood on your hands, which is like what you always have to say when you interrupt some international goon. But like at least it didn't end with just repeated blood on your hands, blood on your hands. There was like information there.
Yes.
There's content.
Yeah, it was good. It was exciting. I like people who do things like that. I'd like to do things like that.
Every like Hillary yelling at her and Bush yelling at her, that's always a good. Like it's never it's never been wrong or bad to be yelling at actual murderers, you know?
Well, you can see like the whole Summit of the Americas. I mean, this was just part of the disaster that the Summit of the Americas was, and it really speaks to what the Biden administration is. It's like a collection of corrupt lobbyists and imperialist neocon chicken hawks who do not want to cooperate with the rest of the world. And Tony Blinken from West Exec Advisors, this just corrupt influence peddling operation that he helped found as the Secretary of State. And he helped design this Summit of the Americas. So they're keeping out a large portion of the population of the Americas because their governments are officially socialist or socialist aligned. They're not totally under the umbrella of Washington. And they've even alienated one of the most important figures in the Western Hemisphere, AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico. He's not there because of the mistreatment of Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. And it shows the lack of credibility that the Biden administration has on the world stage, where it can't even convene nations in its own hemisphere to have a discussion. And you look at Tony Blinken, I don't know if you're going to show any footage of him on stage.
No.
But he's surrounded himself with these, he's on stage with 3 young women who are in their 20s or 30s wearing colorful power suits who have been groomed by US imperial institutions and like State Department backed NGOs. It's a complete Potemkin village that they've created here that is being repudiated by the US's neighbor and one of its oldest allies in Mexico, at a time when there is, whether you are pro-immigration or anti-immigration, whatever position you take, there's no denying there's a crisis on the US-Mexico border that needs to be resolved. And the president doesn't even want to come.
Well, he won't come. I think he'd like to come, but he's not going to come because of the United States treatment of Cuba, Nicaragua, and now I can't remember the third, Venezuela.
Because of their arrogance, because of their sheer arrogance. And let's remember what the United States has done to those 3 countries in recent years. In 2018, the US supported a violent coup attempt in Nicaragua in which the country's GDP was reduced to 0. The entire country was put under blockade by armed gangs of hooligans. Hundreds were killed. Public buildings were burned. People affiliated with the Sandinista party, as I documented, were tortured in the streets, and US-backed media organizations were calling for the murder of the elected president, Daniel Ortega. This year before, the US supported the same kind of violent riots in Venezuela, and then 2 years later, the US supported various military coups in Venezuela run by a puppet, a previously unknown puppet, Juan Guaido, whose entire career had been supported by US soft power institutions. And then as soon as the Biden administration comes into power, they support rioting and a regime change attempt in Cuba. And one of those figures associated with that kind of Cuban color revolution style operation, Yo Tuel, this imperialist rapper who's based in Spain now, was present. He was... Yeah, he's literally like an imperialist rapper. He's from the group Orishas, which was popular for a while. Now he's like a celebrity in Spain, and he went there to hang out with Tony Blinken. So that's sending a message to Cuba. We're going to continue embargoing you. We're going to continue propping up these figures that want to topple your government, and you're not welcome here.
What's his name again?
Yo Tuel, and it's really like Yo Tool, like, what's up, Tool? Yo, you're a fucking tool of the empire.
Okay. Wow. Well, thanks for all that information, Max. That was fantastic. Here, we're doing stand-up comedy in Los Angeles on June 11th, and then we're going to Chicago, Sacramento, and San Diego on July 16th for the taping of my new special. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. See you there.